I want to question your use of the word responsible, which is the way probably an American policymaker would use it. It's the American definition of responsible. So clearly China has risen. Clearly China is a challenge to the American order. Clearly they step out of line here and there, but by and large, I mean, by expanding peacefully through the Belt and Road Initiative and so on, I would say they've acted, I mean, yes, they've challenged the order because they've risen in power, but they're not that irresponsible. That would be, depending how you define it.
I think that's correct. I mean, I think the Chinese understand that they have a vested interest in changing the order somewhat, but not fundamentally undermining the order, at least for the time being. But the problem is that as China grows economically, the United States begins to get more and more fearful, right? Because all of that economic power can be translated into military power. And given that China is not a status quo power, it's very important to understand that China believes that the South China Sea belongs to them. China believes that Taiwan should be made part of mainland China. China believes it should dominate the East China Sea and that these rocks that are a point of dispute with Japan belong to China, not to Japan. So China is interested in not only growing economically, but growing militarily and using its military might to change the status quo. And once the United States starts to see China grow in a really serious way economically, it begins to get very nervous. And by about 2017, it's the Americans more than the Chinese who are intensifying the security competition. It's not so much the Chinese who are changing their behavior in concert with what you were just saying, it's more the Americans. And this is good old-fashioned realist logic at play.
You had a nice, came to me in that clarity just when you observed it to me in our conversations that, of course, Joe Biden made a huge 180-degree turn on China. I mean, the confrontation really was first explicitly mentioned by Trump in the Trump presidency, yes. But before that, Biden was all pro-China, and now...
Yes. When Joe Biden was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and when he was Barack Obama's vice president, right? This is up to 2017, in those decades before 2017. He was an arch proponent of engaging China. He helped in very important ways. He profited, right, from promoting China's rise. When Trump comes in 2017, Trump fundamentally changes American policy towards China. He abandons engagement, explicitly abandons engagement, and he develops a hard-nosed containment policy toward China over his 4 years in the White House. Then Biden comes into the White House in January 2021. Some people expected that Biden would go back to the old policy of engagement. But in fact, what Biden does is he not only continues to pursue Trump's policy of containment, he actually makes it even tougher on the Chinese than Trump did. And what this reflects is the fact that China is now a peer competitor of the United States. It's quite clear that people in the Biden administration are scared stiff of this powerful China. But I would note that these people in the White House were part of the establishment, the foreign policy establishment, that helped turn China into a peer competitor. And when people like me argued in the early 2000s that the United States better slow down China's rise or do everything it can to slow down China's rise, we were dismissed as being remarkably foolish. People said...
And probably old-fashioned,
old-fashioned, yes.
And now you're in the forefront.